Good to see you guys. Good to see you guys. Acts chapter 21 is where we're going to start. It's going to take us into chapter 22 this morning. Welcome, my name is Aaron, pastor here at City Life, and we are in this series walking through part 3 of Acts, and so we're going to take it all the way through to the rest of the book, somewhere we think before Thanksgiving. And we always, we think, give or take 7 to 12 weeks, somewhere in there. But Acts chapter 21 is where we're going to be this morning. What comes to your mind when somebody says, what is your story? What is your story? Somebody walks up. You sit down to coffee. Hey, what's your story? You show up to a city group. Hey, what's your story? Would you tell your story? I guarantee you that for every single one of us, there's a different range of thoughts and feelings that would happen in any given moment. And maybe even just now when I asked you, what's your story? Because for some of you, you'd be like, oh, how much time do I have? How much, what parts do you want to, there's some good stuff in this story. Sit down. It'll only take 4 hours. We'll probably just do it once a Saturday until Christmas. Does that work? I could probably get it all out then. And there's others of you that are like, where's the exit? How fast can I get out of this room, this coffee shop, this small group? There's not a chance I'm going to start telling my story. Because for some of you, your story, you just see a lot of hope. There's a lot of redemption, a lot of restoration. Maybe there just hasn't been a lot of damage. Life has just been relatively smooth for you. Others of you would go, man, if they knew what had happened, if they knew what I've done, if they've known what was done to me, man, they would probably run for their life. And I just can't afford to lose any more than I've already lost. So I'm just better off just keeping that all to myself. At City Life here, we say it all the time, everywhere we are. The first sermon that we ever preached in this church was titled, Your Story Matters. And so we say it all the time, and we actually really believe it. I think people have tried to challenge that and go, well, I bet my story doesn't matter. Bring it to the table. And we say, bring your story, and don't just bring the news. Don't just bring the events that happened. Don't just bring the highlights. Bring the busted up pieces that had some hard shape to some of the turns that you made along the way. And there's a few reasons why we say your story matters. And I think the biggest reason is that no matter what is in your story, not a single chapter of it is beyond repair. Not one piece is too far beyond redemption and being brought back into a place that is beautiful and a story that beautifully gets to be told again. Not one single piece. The second reason is that your story is a part of a bigger story. It is a part of a better story. And so we in the church, we have to come to this place when we say your story matters, and then somebody starts telling their story, and we start getting some really, really, really grimy parts. There's nothing that shocks us. Why? Because we just go, it's really just a part of a bigger story. At the end, when it's redeemed, it's not even your story in the first place, which means it's a part of a better story, which means number 3, your story has to get told. Your story matters because it's much bigger, it's much greater, it's part of a much more magnificent story. And if that story is really the container for your story, everybody's got to know it. No matter what has happened along the way. And so all of those little stories that make up your story, and you can think of all the little stories, right? We could go all the way back and be like, man, give me some childhood stories. You'd be like, ooh. I'd be like, give me some of them college stories. You'd be like, eat. I'd be like, man, let's talk about marriage. Let's talk about parenting. Let's talk about loneliness. Let's talk about faith. Let's talk about coming to Christ. Let's talk about the body of Christ. And we got stories. Don't we have stories? Yeah. We have all these stories, but all of those little stories pieced together into that much, much bigger story. And because of that, my story and your story are to point to and tell the much bigger story. Here's the point. We are not the heroes of our stories. There is a greater hero, a hero of the story that we get to be a part of with these stories, and we get to tell of that story. This is something that Paul has done really, really well. And we'll see it in our passage this morning in Acts chapter 21. We get to the point, just a little context, if you're not there, flip there, get there, where Paul has been on his way to Jerusalem. He gets to Jerusalem. He's told not to go to Jerusalem. Hey, you're going to get arrested in Jerusalem. There's going to be persecution in Jerusalem. It's not going to go well for you in Jerusalem. He walks into the temple, and of course the mob, the angry Jewish mob, just kind of bombards him, begins to beat him up. They are accusing him of wrongly, really defiling the law of Moses, of doing things like bringing a Gentile into the temple. And so they found out who he was. They attacked him. The Roman authorities, they intervened. They brought him out of the mob and yet into their custody. And then they said, "Who are you and what are you doing?" Verse 37. As Paul was about to be brought into the barracks, he said to the tribune, "May I say something to you?" And he said, "Do you know Greek? Are you not the Egyptian then who recently stirred up a revolt and led the 4,000 men of the assassins out into the wilderness?" And so Paul was mistaken for this other sort of political traitor, or this political tyrant who was Egyptian. He brought on this whole army of people, and they're vowed to tear down the wall of Jerusalem. They tried to make their escape. Many of them were captured, killed, but their leader escaped. This just highlights the heightened tension with the political and the cultural and the spiritual outsiders that the city was extremely sensitive to at the time. So here's Paul coming in what seemed like he would be a cultural, a spiritual, maybe even a political outsider, hence the angry mob. Paul replied, verse 39, "I am a Jew from Tarsus of Cilicia, a citizen of no obscure city. I beg you, permit me to speak to the people." And so he's just building his credibility. He's trying to say, I have a voice here. I'm not an outsider. Tarsus was a city of strong social standing, intellectual notoriety. People from Tarsus were well thought of. They were highly respected. It'd almost be like if somebody just said, "Hey, hold on, I have something to say." What gives you the right to have something to say? "Well, I'm from Oxford. I'm from Cambridge." I'm like, "Hey, he ain't dumb. Let the man speak." Good heaven, at least it's going to be decent. This is kind of the credibility that he's trying to build and to gain to have an ear. Then in verse 40, "And when they had given him permission, Paul, standing on the steps, motioned with his hand to the people. And when there was a great hush, he addressed them in the Hebrew language, saying," chapter 22, "Brothers and fathers, hear the defense that I now make before you." And when they heard that he was addressing them in the Hebrew language, they became even more quiet. So here he is, just continuing to gain even more credibility. He wants to tell his story. But he knows there's going to be opposition. He knows he's going to need some credibility. Hey, but hold on, this is who I am. This is my citizenship. This is where I'm from. I speak your language, he is saying. And so he's given even more credibility that he was not an outsider. Man, so when we're telling our stories, it's important that our words matter, that we're intelligent and mindful, that we are seeking wisdom with the vocabulary, with the tone, with the presence, with the icon, with everything that we're doing to engage who we're talking to. That we're humble in our presentation, that we're gentle in our defense. In all of these things, that we wouldn't be an outsider of sorts, so that we could tell our story. Colossians 4, 5, and 6 says, "Walk in wisdom toward outsiders, making the best use of the time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. There's an importance of speaking the language of the culture, of the audience, that we want to hear the love story of Jesus through the stories that we've lived. I told you a while back, I spoke at a men's retreat several months back in Oregon. And I'm speaking at a men's retreat coming up in November in Lake Tahoe. Let me just tell you about these two different crowds. The crowd that I was speaking to in Oregon was like Farmer Central, like tuck your jeans into your cowboy boots kind of a crowd, right? You know, we get the picture? It was kind of a Kimball looking kind of a crowd. We good? And so I love that guy so much. This is my people. I get there and I get to this retreat and I'm just telling you, these were some like giant corn-fed brothers who just got off combines and were like, let's go to the men's retreat. Like they were like literally, they told the camp not to cook dinner. They brought their own steaks 2 nights in a row. I'm not kidding you. It's dinner time. Everybody goes to their truck, no Hondas, and pulls out a cooler, pulls out their steaks, giant grills, like the kind that you pull in on trailers. I'm not kidding you. Farmers, like the bass player, like he had to run home, like do some farming, come back, continue to lead worship. I've got to roll up into, and then here comes this fella from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. I gotta roll in there and be like, hey, pastor's like, he comes from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. And before they have a chance to Google our demographic, our socioeconomics, like the whole situation that we got going on here, I gotta get up and go, hey guys, I just want you to know, I grew up among you. I grew up just down the street from most of you. I was raised in this town. I was brought up in the same high school as many of you. Some of us already went back and told stories of what we did on senior skip day. I'm among you. God had a journey for me. I had to gain that credibility. I couldn't just come in and just be like, man, let me just tell you what it's like over here in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Jesus is on the move. Now I'm getting ready to go to Lake Tahoe. I don't know what you know about Lake Tahoe, but they put Mount Pleasant to shame sometimes. So I can't walk up there and an Oregon boy rolling into Lake Tahoe and being like, man, I just got off the combine, just coming up in here at Richville. There's a part of me just got to go, hey, I come from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. I think we speak some similar language here. And that posture and that presentation and that picture of the story that God has had me on, I'm going to speak from that voice. I'm going to speak from that position. Why? Because I want them to hear it. I want them to hear the love story of Jesus, and Lord, make it possible through all means that I might be a container and a communicator of what you are doing. If we want to be effective in sharing the gospel through our stories, there's this important relating component that we cannot miss. I think the days of standing on street corners with bullhorns and picket signs are far past us. We have stories to tell that point to the greater story that must be told. And he said, verse 3, I am a Jew born in Tarsus in Cilicia, but brought up in this city, educated at the feet of Gamaliel, according to the strict manner of the law of our fathers, being zealous for God as all of you are to this day. And so he's kind of pointing to, man, I was brought up under a Pharisee. I was brought up under one who is among you in the Sanhedrin, a teacher, a highly notable scholar of the law. God brought up zealous for these things, zealous to walk with our God through obedience and adherence to the things of the law. And so at this point, he probably had the attention of the crowd. Oh, wait a second, I thought this was the guy who was against the law. He was brought up under Gamaliel? Oh, well, maybe we had this whole thing wrong. Do tell us more, Paul. Verse 4, I persecuted this way to the death the way, capital W, the Christians, those who were turning from and walking with Jesus. He says, I persecuted them to the death. And at this point, the crowd's probably going, yeah, you did. Let this guy go. He's among us. He's one of us. Binding and delivering to prison both men and women, as the high priest and the whole council of the elders can bear me witness. From them I received letters to the brothers, and I journeyed toward Damascus to take those also who were there and bring them in bonds to Jerusalem to be punished. And at this point, everybody's going, was this the guy in the temple that we accused of defiling the law? Not only was he brought up under the law, man, he was smoking people who were against it. This is Paul before Jesus. We can go back into the story in the book of Acts, and we can see his account of his life, and we can see some of his actions in the stoning of Stephen, and the way that he would give way to these things, he would approve of these things. He's telling them who he was and how he was a lot like they are. Just like us without Jesus. Just like us before Jesus. You know who you are before Jesus comes into that story and does his thing with it? You're simply lost without Jesus. That's just who we are. We're lost without Jesus. I mean, like, who some of you are is lost without Jesus. Who some of you were before Jesus was still lost without Jesus. And I think it's important to remind some of us of this from time to time, because, I mean, we'll get 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, Lord help us, 40 years into this game sometimes, and we'll forget where we came from. And we wonder why our worship just gets a little more diminished and a little more diminished and a little more just torn down and taken away. And because we forgot who we were before Jesus, then Jesus comes along and we're reminded of who we were before that. And all of a sudden our worship just grows and it grows and it grows, lest we forget who we were before Jesus. Who we were or who we are before Jesus looks different for all of us, but isn't different for any of us. You hear that? Who we were looks different for all of us, but in fact isn't different for any of us. Every single one of us before Jesus, no matter what the story, is lost. Lost, lost, lost. Nobody gets to say, but I was better than some of them, so I was less lost. Without Jesus, you're still lost. And there's different degrees of lost. For some of you, like you are or you were crazy lost. Let's just call it crazy lost. Like, these are the stories that you hear and you just go, that's messed up. That's wild. Can you believe that Jesus got a hold of that, brother? After all of that life that was lived? Unbelievable. Paul was a murderer. And yet we call him one of the greatest, if not the greatest, most powerful voices, missionaries, forces for the gospel ever since Christ. Crazy, crazy lost. And maybe you have a part of that story where you're just like, I was crazy lost. My best friend to this day was crazy lost, like drug dealer in college, drug dealer on a Christian campus. Like, went to jail for a couple weeks for knocking a guy out at a party. Charges were pending, first-degree murder, whether or not the guy lived. Crazy lost. Crazy, crazy, crazy lost. To think then of the story that would continue to unfold, to be like, but then Jesus came along, right? This just tells us crazy loss. Crazy loss just reminds us that no story is too far gone. No story is beyond an opportunity for the grace of Jesus to come in and be like, watch this. Just watch this. Some of you are good lost. You ain't crazy lost, you're good lost. You ain't had no crazy. You're just like, hey, I don't have that testimony. It was like, man, I sold drugs, went to prison, knocked a guy out, then Jesus, and then the people with like good lost stories, they're like, man, I just don't have a good story. You're just as lost as crazy lost. You're good lost. Lost is still lost. Are we tracking? We just go, man, but I've just been good. Like, I mean, I haven't been like a saint or anything, but like I never really heard anything. I still haven't swore. I never touched alcohol. I'm just like, I don't know, but Jesus, he was just kind of like trying to figure. But this is like the rich young ruler who comes along and stands before Jesus and goes, man, I just got it dialed in. Can I come with you? Like I'm good. Like I got this. I paid for this. I'm tracking with this, and everything's good. And Jesus goes, that's only partial surrender. Good surrender, good lost still needs full surrender. Go and sell everything you have to bring your full surrender to me. That's what Jesus says. Jesus interacted with a lot more crazy than the rich young ruler. But he still said, there's more for you. There's still more surrender. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. Then there's sort of this in-between lost. You're like, man, I certainly wasn't good, but I didn't do anything that bad. I think I would venture to say this is probably where most of us would land, right? I mean, I'm no saint, but I wasn't that crazy. There was a whole crowd of these in the Gospels. There was a whole crowd of these in Paul's time. They were called the Pharisees. We look real good on the outside, but we're just swimming in the depths of our sin on the inside. We're just in between lost. Romans 3:10-12 says, as it is written, none is righteous. No, not one. No one understands. No one seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good, not even one. All are lost. All are lost. The good don't do good. All are lost. No one is too far gone. No one is too far gone, and no one can be too good. But this is part of the story, right? This is part of the story. Well, I've been crazy. Well, I've been good. And if all are lost, that's an important part of the story, because if we're going to talk about what we're being rescued to in the story, we need to talk about and be reminded of what we're being rescued from in the story. And this is what Paul was doing. He's saying, I was lost. I was far from walking with Jesus, really, really, really far, but then, so remember, here we are in the story. Paul's like, man, look at the things that I've done. And everybody's going, yeah, maybe he wasn't the bad guy that we thought he was. Paul had an out. Like if he just wanted to see little more freedom, he could have just been like, so what's the big deal? Let me go. Verse 6, as I was on my way and drew near to Damascus, about noon, a great light from heaven suddenly shone around me. And I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And I answered, who are you, Lord? And he said to me, I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting. And you could just kind of feel and hear the crowd begin to kind of rumble and get angry again. Now those who were with me saw the light, but did not understand the voice of the one who was speaking to me. And I said, what shall I do, Lord? And the Lord said to me, rise and go into Damascus, and there you will be told all that is appointed for you to do. And since I could not see because of the brightness of that light, I was led by the hand by those who were with me and came into Damascus. So here he says, this is who I was before Jesus. And then Jesus comes into the story. Comes into my story. I have an encounter with him. Things begin to radically be shaken up. He shows me who he is. He makes himself known. He knocks me off the path that I was on. Verse 12, and one Ananias, a devout man according to the law, well spoken of by all the Jews who lived there, he came to me, and standing by me said to me, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And at that very hour I received my sight and saw him. And he said, the God of our fathers appointed you to know his will, to see the righteous one, and to hear a voice from his mouth. For you will be a witness for him to everyone of what you have seen and heard. And now why do you wait? Rise and be baptized and wash away your sins, calling on his name. So this is Paul's story, but he's telling the crowds this. That I would receive my sight back. That my old sight would be gone after Jesus came into my story. And that I would receive a new sight. And then Ananias says that you would see the righteous one. That you would see Jesus and you would hear him speak. I've given you a new direction. I've set you on a new course. I've written in you a better story. I will make you a witness. I will cause you to speak of what you have seen and what you have heard. Paul, you will tell the world about me. The story must be told. If you've seen Jesus, and I'm not talking like Damascus Road kind of a thing. You just don't overcomplicate this. You've experienced Jesus. You've had an encounter with Jesus. You've heard Jesus. But I don't know, but Pastor, I don't know. I think some people just have that spiritual gift. I just don't know I've ever heard from him. You're hearing from him right now. Well, I don't know. He sounds angry and he's redheaded, and I just don't think that's how it goes. His word. Church, look. His word. It's called his word, capital W. He is the word. His word is open and you are hearing from him right now. You're seeing him right now. What you see and what you hear, you must share. What good is a story if we don't get to tell it? I have one of my favorite stories, like favorite stories in the book of Acts. You've probably heard me say this before, but it goes back to Acts chapter 4. It's Peter and John. I mean, they're stirring things up. The church is forming. The number of believers is growing, and they just got done healing a guy who was paralyzed in temple courts, and then it just causes this big stir. Wow, who would do this? And then the authorities, they arrest Peter and John, bring them in and say, man, why would you do this? They're causing a stir. They're going to take the attention away from the law. And by whose name do they do this? They're like, Jesus, and have him arrested. They see that the guy's healed, so they're kind of like, I mean, it's true. So then they say in Acts chapter 4, verse 17, but in order that it may spread no further among the people, let us warn them to speak no more to anyone in this name. So they called them and charged them not to speak or teach at all in the name of Jesus. Fellas, you ain't going to tell no stories about Jesus. You need to talk about what he's done. You need to talk about who he is. You need to talk about what he does. That guy getting healed, that was wow. That was wild. Just don't tell him it was Jesus. But Peter and John answered them, whether it is right in the sight of God to listen to you rather than to God, you must judge. For we cannot For we cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard. We cannot help but speak. We have to tell the story. Like, there's no power in your story if it's not Jesus' name behind it, and if it's not being told. We must proclaim. The world must hear, this is what he's done in this is who I was before him. It was wild, it was an absolute mess. But then Jesus came into my life, and let me tell you something. He gave me a fresh story. He gave me a new story. The old was gone, he brought in the new. Oh my gosh. There is a time in your life when you are far from Jesus, lost without Jesus, but then he shows up in your life and he makes himself known. For some of you, he showed up in your life at your greatest point of need, and he made himself known. He made himself known through his word. He's made himself known through community. He's made himself known through prayer. He's making himself known. For some of you, he is making himself known to you today. He's making himself known to you right now. You are hearing his word, and things are stirring, and you're being confronted with the things that are in your story that just feel so broken and so lost. And you go, and I just don't know that I can piece this together. I've been trying for the better part of my life to fix this, to correct this, to right this wrong, to do something with this shame, to be good and to do better. And you still feel lost. You still feel lost. Paul says, I was lost, but then Jesus, and in verse 17, when I had returned to Jerusalem and was praying in the temple, I fell into a trance and saw him saying to me, make haste and get out of Jerusalem quickly, because they will not accept your testimony about me. And I said, Lord, they themselves know that in one synagogue after another, I imprisoned and beat those who believed in you. And when the blood of Stephen, your witness, was being shed, I myself was standing by and approving and watching over the garments of those who killed him. And he said to me, go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles. So Paul's trying to remind Jesus like he didn't know. You ever do that? He's trying to remind Jesus where he's come from. But Jesus, I was the guy at the Stephen situation. That was me. I was that guy. I was there. He tries to tell Jesus that he's too far gone, that he might be beyond repair, that he was the worst of the worst. And Jesus essentially says, Paul, before me you were a lost mess of a man, but then I rescued you. I rescued you from yourself and from your sin, and I made you mine. And I gave you a new direction. And now your story gets to tell of my story. Go. Go. And I will send you to people who will hear it. It will not fall on deaf ears. I think some of us forget, Christians, I think some of us forget that we have been given new life. That the old one is gone, that the new one has come, that we've been given a new direction. We are no longer walking in the direction that we have set out for ourselves. I'm not saying don't pursue your career. I'm not saying don't pursue a family. I'm not saying any of that. That is good and godly direction for your life. I'm saying, and we're no longer walking in a direction where we are bound and stuck, left to our sin to figure it out on our own. We've been given a new direction where Jesus says, I've got you. I'm lighting the path before you. It's freedom ahead. You're not stuck in that. He says, you're not stuck to this old story, this mess that you have to tell. You can tell of the mess, but you can tell what happened after it. You can talk about the restoration. You can talk about salvation because you have it in me. What is your story? Your story before Jesus? See, I was a bit of an in-between. I was a bit of an in-between lost myself. I had just enough crazy in me to call myself good. I had enough good in me to still get away with a little crazy. I wasn't too out of control, but I definitely knew how to be. And if there were some people in the room, they'd be like, it was pretty crazy, bro. I was there for it. And I was a little bit more like, to be honest with you, I was a bit of that in between. Admittedly, it probably at some stages of my life looked a little more pharisaical, if I'm being honest with you. When I began to walk with Jesus in high school, man, I just started to start looking really, really good to try to cover up some of the grimy shame that I had in my life. And while there was just a bunch of sin on the inside, man, you'd just find me at youth group looking like this. At 16 years old, Jesus came to me and just said, you're living a double life. It's like you're living your life on this fence and there's 2 yards that you want to play in, and you got the yard of crazy lost over here and you got the yard of good lost over here, and you just need to make a decision and get off the fence and find that I have you. Quit living this in-between sort of situation. It's full surrender or no surrender. There's no in-between surrender. And by God's grace, I got off that fence and surrendered my life to Jesus. I really believe that I was given new life. I really, really believe, absolutely believe that I was given a new direction. I was no longer going the direction that I was going, that I had planned for my life. He set me on a new course, charging a new story, where it would be a story of one where I would walk in learning to daily surrender my life to Jesus, which, by the way, I'm far from mastering it to this point. But that I would continually just try to go daily, what's another day of surrender look like, Jesus? What's another day of surrender look like, Jesus? And it was on a rooftop in Eastern Europe one day when I just said, Lord, I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you have for me. What is this life of walking with you? Is this just it? Like, we're just going to go to church on Sunday, occasional mission trip, study the Bible on Tuesdays? Like, what is it? And he says, no, Aaron, you're going to preach the gospel and you're going to plant churches and you're going to do it till the day you die. And I absolutely broke. It was just a new story, a new direction. It wouldn't be my story to tell. It would be a story that I would tell of a greater story, that my story is a understory in. You see, that's the beauty. I don't have to figure out how to tell my story in a way that's so impressive. I tell the one that is impressive, and I just be like, and somewhere along the way, he allowed me to be a part of it. That's my story. It's not even me, it's him. It's his story that we tell. It's his story of what he's done in our life that we tell. It's not our story that we tell of what we've done with him. You see how we get it backwards sometimes? I mean, boy, that feels good though, because it kind of keeps us in control. And if I can be in control, then I can kind of control what I worship. I can control when I worship. I can control who sees it, who agrees with it, who feels it. But when it is his story and by his grace, I get to be a part of it. It's full surrender. It's full surrender and nothing less. I love this quote. I always have. I need to say it more. It's Reformed Dutch theologian Abraham Kuyper. He says, there is not a square inch in the whole domain of our human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, mine! It's all mine. None of it is left for you to keep for yourself. It is all mine, which means it's full surrender. He gets all of it. Not just talking stuff, not just talking time, talking my affection, my conviction, all of my being, all of my worship. No glory, zero glory is ever to be left for myself. He gets all of it. And so, let me just say this to the two crowds of people in the room. You're either not a Christian or you're a lukewarm Christian. And I'm sorry if that offends you, but maybe it's time to consider thinking for 30 years that you've been a fully surrendered follower of Jesus, that you're just tasting the edge of the fork. That there's still a massive meal in front of you to feast on when it comes to who Christ is in your life. Surrender all. Keep nothing for yourself. Give him all of your worship. Keep no glory for yourself. And when somebody says, tell me how awesome you are, you say, I don't have an ounce of awesome in me. But I'll tell you the story that I get to be a part of, that by a miracle I was written into. Oh, it's a wild story. Let me tell you, this is who I was. But then Jesus, and now let me tell you what he's doing. That's the story. That's the story that I'm a part of. Luke 9:23 says, Jesus says, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself. Just let him deny himself. Take up his cross daily and follow me. Christians, here's something I want you to walk away with this morning. That your surrender was not just the day that you said yes to Jesus. It's every day since. Every day since I'm waking up and I'm praying a prayer of salvation. Lord, would you rescue me today? Jesus, I need you today. I need your salvation. I want to walk in your freedom. I need it today. And I'll need it tomorrow, and I'll need it the next day, and I'll need it the next day. Not out of fear that it didn't stick from the day before or it didn't stick from when I was 16. That's not the rescue I'm talking about. I'm secured in that, sealed by that, by the grace of God through the rescue of the Spirit. I know where I'm going. My day is certain. But is there a Christian in this room who would say that this walk has been easy? That tomorrow's not coming with another battle? That sin's not knocking at the door the second you walk out of this room this morning? I want to give all of my surrender to him. There's still more. And then for those who would say, gosh, I've been giving it a go to give my full surrender. I love Jesus. He is Lord of my life, keeper of my salvation. I long for him. I seek out his rescue for my life, and I'm growing in my affections for his word. I just long to find myself in constant worship of who he is. Hear me, hear me. Tell the world. Tell everybody. Tell everybody. What do you have to lose? Because listen, we can play this game where you can give me the list of all the things that are at stake in your life. If you get zealous for the fame of Jesus and all the consequences and all the consequences, I'm telling you, the consequence is coming for all of us. And we will stand before him. And no matter what happens, I just want to not care anymore what people think. In this town, in this life, in this church, in this community, among other pastors, among other Christians, he'd be like, man, he's just an angry pastor. Man, he's a passionate pastor. He wants the world to know Jesus. And I want to stand in front of Jesus and go, there's a few more here because of you, man. That's it. And if that's your story, why wouldn't that be true for all of us? Why wouldn't it be true for all of us that, like Peter and John, facing the risk, facing the opposition, just kind of laugh and look at each other like, I hear what you're saying, but we just don't have a choice. It's not even an option. It's not even something to discern. We can't help it. I'll leave you with this. Turn to 1 John. Maybe. Don't. I'm already there. I beat you. This is the same John. In chapter 1 and verse 1, he says, that which was from the beginning. Who was in the beginning? Jesus. Jesus, not the beginning of the New Testament. And go back Colossians. He was with God in the beginning. All things were created by him and through him and for him. That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon and have touched with our hands concerning the word of life. The life was made manifest. You know what that word manifest means? It was made tangible. We could see it, we could feel it, like it was brought before us. It's a thing. It's here. And we have seen it. And we testify to it and proclaim to you the eternal life, which was from the Father and was made manifest to us. That which we have seen and heard, we proclaim also to you, so that, here's why, so that you too may have fellowship with us. And indeed, our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. Listen, all power is his. All creation is his. All grace is his. All provision is his. All worship is his. All glory is his. It's full surrender. He is the one. He is the only. And listen, it doesn't mean the story's not going to be hard. It doesn't mean it's not going to come without its challenges. It just means that there's a point in the story where we get to say, but then Jesus. But then Jesus shows up in that mess. And let me tell you what he's done. Amen? Would you stand with me?